Thank you for joining me on the second video of the 4 viewpoints that we can view Scripture. This one is the symbolic or symbolism video, and we'll go over what symbolisms are and how they function, but also give biblical examples of symbolisms within Scripture. Let's begin. Now, first off, what a symbolism is in its most essential form, or most basic form, is the use of symbols to represent ideas and or qualities. Now, when we're looking at symbols or thinking of symbolisms, they can mean a few different things here. Obviously, a symbolism such as whenever we're looking at something in a dream, anything can be a symbolism. And like everything in a dream, it has a meaning for the most part. But that really depends on what kind of dream it is. But that's a side point. This is not a dream interpretation video. This is specifically for symbolisms. All symbolisms can mean different things to people. So if you have, let's say you have a book on symbolisms, and they're going to list multiple different meanings for that specific symbolism. And depending on each person and their experience in life, that specific symbolism can mean something totally different to that person. But that doesn't mean that that person is correct, because there's also an objective understanding. Even if that person has a specific understanding of a symbolism, it doesn't mean that they're correct, because one specific symbolism can have an objective meaning to that. So let's look at a couple different scenarios or possibilities when it comes to these symbolisms. All right, so let's look at a couple different examples here. So we already know the meaning that a person takes for a symbolism may not be correct, and that all symbolisms do have an objective understanding. So for one example, one person could look at an island, and let's say someone just went through a very bad time in their year, and all of a sudden in their life, let's say in a dream, they only see themselves on an island and they're isolated. Really bad thing. They don't feel like they have anyone else in their life because their life has been destroyed or went through a calamity. So that's a negative thing. Versus someone else who is much more of an introvert and they prefer their isolation. Being on an island to them could seem like paradise, but hopefully you see a little bit of a better understanding here. And so, for instance, let's look a bit of an objective view here. In Scripture, we know that Jesus died on the cross, and so for the most part, it could mean sacrifice, death, and it could also mean salvation. But let's say someone who has a very negative understanding or negative viewpoint of the church, instead of seeing these positive things, they see something meaning towards hypocritical, someone who is overly critical on things, just bringing death to everyone. When in reality, it's a good sign. And it even goes back to the 12 tribes and the time in Egypt where the 12 tribes were in the form of a cross. But that's a hidden aspect of Scripture that requires research to see. So we can see that, obviously, on the objective side of it, this cross is a positive sign. Even the upside down cross, Peter desired to be hung upside down on the cross. So that is still a Christian and a positive understanding. But for some people, let's say some people who are really into Satanism, and they like the upside down cross because that shows anti-Christ, anti-Jesus, anti-religion type thing understanding, they're going to wear that because they're anti that. But still, in reality, and according to history, it's still a positive understanding. Now, in dreams, we know and can see that the symbolisms can represent events, but many times they're too complicated to show in such a short period of time whenever we're dreaming. So we see these random events that represent the idea of a longer form of event that's going on. Let's say, for instance, someone's family member is pregnant and their sister is giving birth to their first child. Up until now, the family has been able to go about with their life without too many hindrances. But suddenly they know that with that pregnancy and with the new child, things are going to be changing a bit, and some of those freedoms are going to be removed. For instance, someone can have a dream of something flying through the sky and hitting, let's say, the Statue of Liberty. And so that means that liberty, the freedom, is being destroyed because things are completely changing. So a certain amount of freedom is being removed or destroyed with that, the new birth. And so that can be viewed in two different perspectives. One, it could be viewed as a positive. Everything that changes becomes a new beginning and also an ending. So with the destruction of freedom, yeah, they're losing some independence, some freedom, but there's also some joy coming into the aspect too. And so by the hitting of the Statue of Liberty by, let's say it was an asteroid or whatever, it represents something, a destruction of something, an idea, but it's also representing something new coming. And so rather than showing images of all this stuff that the soon-to-be mother is going on, a quick idea of what is going to happen occurs. The destruction of the Statue of Liberty, for instance. The removal of freedom. Yeah, they're going to still have a form of freedom, but the idea of the independence and freedom that they're used to is being destroyed, and thus bringing in the new. So that's an idea of what the symbolism in a dream can indicate whenever it's showing something quick that represents a whole thing that's too much to show in just a short period of time. Now let's look at a couple other examples of symbolisms, but specifically within Scripture. One quick example of symbolism within Scripture is Jesus. We know that Scripture says and calls Jesus a lion and a lamb, but he's not a literal lion and a lamb. That makes no sense, but it's symbolism and allegory when referring to that. Because obviously we know that Scripture calls Jesus the lamb for the sacrifice, which he was a sacrifice on the cross. But he's, again, not a literal lamb. And so many people who think that Scripture needs to be interpreted 100% literally don't really understand what they're saying, because they're calling Jesus a literal lion and a literal lamb. Let's look at a couple other symbolisms that are shown in Scripture. Alright, so let's say in Joseph's dreams, we see that he is shown stalks, I believe it was stalks of wheat that were bowing down to him, and then planetary bodies that were bowing down to him, all of which were shown in symbolism. I forget what Joseph was. Well, let's say he was another pile of wheat or hay that was going on in that dream, and they're bowing down. So obviously he was represented by wheat, and so was his parents, and so was his family. And then we also look at the other dream that he had of all the planetary bodies bowing down to him. Each one represented a family member, and he was represented by a planetary body too. But that doesn't mean that that Scripture was literally calling each person that thing or pile of straw, whatever it was, wheat, straw. Hey, you get the idea. It doesn't mean that they're literally calling them that, but it's using that symbolism to represent that person of what's going on. And we can see this several other times in Scripture too. It's not just 2 times. It's any time a vision or a dream is occurring that symbolism is being made to represent that person or event in that dream for something much deeper, and that lies on us to look into. Because I think it's Proverbs, it says it's the glory of God to conceal a matter, and the glory of kings to seek that matter out, which means it's up to us to seek that mystery out. And whenever we are seeing symbolisms in dreams, visions, or whatever in life, it is our responsibility that God has given us to seek Him deeper, to find out what He's trying to tell us, what He's trying to show us. And these symbolisms, and that helps our relationship, our intimacy with Him, and seeking that stuff out, and brings us into a deeper understanding, deeper knowledge of what He has for us. So again, with these dreams and visions, they're symbolic meanings referring to literal things, people, and events. But it doesn't mean that what is being represented in the symbolism is going to happen exactly as what's being shown in that vision is going to happen like that. No, it's representing certain events that are going to take place, possibly. It's just assuming it's prophetic in nature, but shows that whatever is going on in that dream that's being represented by symbolism represents those people, places, or things in the physical and the literal world, or what in the dream world it's called the waking world. Like me talking to you right now is in the waking world. So all these symbolisms represent something in the waking world, but it's up to us, if assuming the dream is from God, it's up to us to seek out that idea and find out, what are you trying to show me with this symbolism? It's all just an open door. It's a portal to something deeper with Him. But this has been the symbolic video. I hope it helped you. Next up will be the metaphoric video, where we go over different metaphors and what they mean, and a few different examples of Scripture, because there are a lot of different metaphors in Scripture that most of us don't even catch. I know I have caught a percentage of them. But until then, like and subscribe, and y'all take care.